Right, hello everybody, back at the Superbike factory for another one of my 3 bike roundups. So, I'm looking at retro classics today, and just some of those retro classics which I think get slightly overlooked for the sort of more mainstream ones. So we're going to have a bit of a hot rod one, that's for Chris Hills, I'm going to do that one, and one of my subscribers. And we're going to look at the quintessential retro classic, which you'll all understand, and then one which is my little left field one, which I like to do at the end, which I think is an absolutely superb piece of kit, and quite a rare bike, and has a really important, really big following in the UK. So, thanks to the guys at Superbike Factory at Crawley, let's go and have a look at the first bike. Come on, it's not going to be this, by the way. Come on. Right, so here we are, my first choice. A little bit left field this, and I think this is a bike that gets sort of quite overlooked in that sort of retro classic sort of environment. But it's a bike that's certainly in that sort of world, because the Ducati Scrambler has got its history going back into the sort of late 60s, 70s. And although they didn't release a new sort of Scrambler back until the sort of early 2000s, I think, or mid 2000s, its design is very much aping that original bike, which hopefully you'll be seeing on the screen now. But of the 3 bikes that I've picked today, this is certainly the most powerful. You're looking at over 70 horsepower. It's the L Twin, and this is the key thing about this bike. What I really like about it is that engine in here. Now this engine dates back from when the first Ducati Monster came out, the 800 SI, which was the first fuel-injected model. It's about 803 cc's, I think it is. But it's a great engine, and the nice thing about it is serviceable. It's home serviceable. It's not impossible, which is one of the reasons why I picked it. The other thing about this bike is obviously the fact that it's quite low. You know, I'm shrinking by the day. I'm sort of about 5'10.5" these days, I think. But I'm completely flat-footed. The other nice thing is the weight. So the 3 bikes I'm going to look at today, this is pretty much light, about 185 kilos. Quite a slim tank, nice upright bar on here, but it's not a heavy bike, and none of these Ducatis are heavy, and that's the beauty of them. The other thing is, I just think the styling it's a little bit Marmite-y, because it's not. When you first look at it, you don't immediately think, oh, retro classic, do you really? I don't think, but it's a funny one, but it is just a pretty bike. The other reason I put this in, because I think these are good value now. These are really good value. Obviously, the link to all 3 bikes is going to be in the description, because obviously being a Superbike factory, we can get all the details on these. But this is well sub £4,000. So we're looking at a 2015 model with about 8,000 miles on the clock. But fantastic. So what are the sort of the downsides to the Ducati before we finish on the good sides? Well, one, they do run hot. I think these L Twins do run quite hot, and it's always when you've got a temperature gauge, you look at it and think, oh, it's getting hot. I remember it's like on my Monster with the same engine as this, and it was always looking at it, this thing's going to blow up in a minute, and then you realise, well, hang on a minute, they're made, they've ridden around sort of like, Italy, which is much hotter than here, and they don't blow up. These bikes do not blow up. It's an incredibly robust engine, but it's a very, it's quite an old engine, really, at the end of the day. This is the Icon model, so we have got a few extra little bits and pieces on it, but you do have the alloy wheels. I suppose people don't sort of associate a classic bike with alloy wheels, but the next bike we're going to look at also has those. But it has a nice off-centre clock, which is sort of quite the thing these days, isn't it? This one actually has heated grips and other sort of creature comforts on it. But it's just a nice bike. One of my subscribers, Chris, who lives in France, and I think he's in Spain at the moment with his Scrambler. Fantastic bikes. But when you're looking at price-wise, these new at the moment, you're looking around 10.5, 11,000 quid. So when you're looking around a sort of sub 4 for a bike like this, it's got to be a good buy, isn't it? It's got to be a good buy. And again, like I said before, the other week when I was looking at the Desert X, Ducati Desert X, don't be frightened by servicing costs. Particularly on this one, this is a quite easy bike to service. You know, all changes are easy, and that belt service is very, very straightforward. As long as you know what you're doing, go onto YouTube, study the videos of how they do it, because that's what I did on mine, which is the same engine, and it was a very straightforward job to do. But you will find independent retailers or dealers who will service these for not huge amounts of money. But I think the joy of this bike is just that engine. It's just the way that it puts its power down, and that it's just a fantastic ride and a fantastically powerful, torquey engine, which is really nice to ride. Right, so here it is. Obviously, it's a Bonneville, isn't it? It's going to be a Bonneville. It's the most ubiquitous retro classic ever, isn't it, really? Because it just keeps going on and on and on. But the one I've chosen here, I've not gone for the sort of, you know, the latest T100s, etc. This is, so specifically, this is the 865 Bonneville. And the 865 Bonnevilles were the sort of first of the, although the blokes at the transitional time when they went into fuel injection. And I will come back to that in a second. But this one specifically is the SE model. Now, I had this bike, and you know, it was such a pretty bike, and in this sort of, like, I want to call it sort of burnt orange sort of colour. It's not that common, and it's not the bike you immediately think it's not the regular colours that people really go for. But I think it stands out really nicely. Of the three bikes we're going to show you, this is the middle in performance-wise. We're looking at about sort of 60 horsepower, so it's down on the Ducati, and I think the Ducati would leave this for dead. But what you do get on this bike, we go back to those sort of classic twin clocks, which is really nice. So we're in this era when we were still putting twin clocks on, where everybody seems to go onto single clocks now, which sort of puts people off a little bit, doesn't it? But people always want a way to get into that sort of triumph. When they're looking at retro classics or modern classics, the bike people think of straight away is always going to be Triumph, isn't it? And the Bonneville. So this is also the last of the air-cooled Bonnevilles, because we then went, was it about 2015, 16, something like that, we went to the water-cooled T100, which again is another step further in there, really. I think the T100, the water-cooled T100 is a fantastic bike, and I prefer it actually to the T120. But the 865, so the 865, the other thing is, this is by far the heaviest of the three bikes as well, where we've got the Ducati, which is a real lightweight sort of racer, really, I suppose you'd call it. We're sort of 215 kilos. We've broken the 200 kilo barrier with this bike, and you do feel it. You do know you're on a heavier bike. But the thing with these Bonnevilles, they are incredibly solid. They are so beautifully put together, I think. So, you know, these are the bikes which came out of the Triumph factory here in the UK, and it shows, you know, they're great. The funny thing with these bikes, and why I think they probably not as popular as other types of Bonneville, is because of the alloy wheels. It's an acquired taste, isn't it? And again, it's like I said with the Ducati, do you like alloy wheels on your classic bike? A lot of people don't, but I don't mind it on this, and in this colourway, I think it actually really works. This bike in particular, though, so we're looking at relatively low mileage. You know, these bikes, as long as they're service proper, go on and on and on, and the finish is pretty good. You do things to look out on these bikes. So you can sometimes find that these cases start to go in terms of finish comes off them. So if you want your bike to be pristine, then you've got to make sure you polish your cases. You don't tend to get any issues on the heads and the fins. They don't tend to corrode so readily. But the paint finishes and stuff like that on these is absolutely superb. And they are pretty comfortable bikes. Again, look how low I am. You know, this is a standard ride height, but my feet are well planted on the floor. So it opens it up to a lot of people, a lot of riders, this bike. I always used to find that with my Bonnevilles that I would get hip cramp for some reason, all the Bonnevilles. And that's really to do with just the position of the legs, I suppose, where it gets you here. But they're nice bikes. They're nice, solid, reliable bikes. One thing I will say about these, though, you have to be careful of. With the introduction of fuel injection into the Bonneville range, these have a strange, which I never really understood to start with. It feels like a choke. It's almost like you've got a choke on here, which you pull out. And that system there, it actually is, it's not a choke because it's fuel injected. Someone's going to correct me on this. It sets the throttle. It sets the throttle when you're starting it from cold. Because one thing you don't want to do is rev it to start it, because it will just conk out. And I used to have on my one of these the situation where it would, you could be in a garage for 10 minutes and get out, and you would still need to just put it out the first stop, not all the way. So yeah, you have to sort of work out how that works. Anybody that watches Freddie Dobbs will know that he's always pulling out the little throttle set on his bike to start it. But it's like anything, once you get used to it, they work really well. But as a machine to, you know, enjoy and sort of look after and ride and have a joy to ride and look at it, I think the SE is a bike that gets slightly overlooked, and I have seen a few of these out available. Now this one, you know, what's the T100 these days? About 11,000–12,000 quid. This you're going into sort of 4,700, 4,800 sort of mark, but I have seen them certainly at the SUPERBIKE factory on some of the different branches a lot cheaper than this. Exactly the same model in this colour. So this might be a nice way into the Bonneville world, isn't it? Really, the SE. But I think it's a really, really handsome bike. The bars on here are slightly different. I think this would benefit from higher bars, and I think they'd be more enjoyable to ride. But it's, you know, it's all the things you get in the switch gear and all the rest of it is really, really high quality. So yeah, the Bonneville SE, that's the one I would try if you're going to go into the Bonneville world and not have to spend too much. Then the sort of mid-teen, we're sort of 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14. The SE is a nice way into the Bonneville world. But yeah, I like that. I missed my one. The one I bought, or someone who bought it, did 500 miles in it and left it in their garage on a trickle charger. Didn't do it much good. And I paid next to nothing for it, but it was a beautiful bike, and I sort of wish I still had that now, because I miss having a Triumph in the garage. I really do. But the SE, yeah, 865 SE. Right, on to the last one, and I think you'll like this. Let's go and have a look at it. Right, so this is my ace in the hole. I think these are fantastic bikes. So what have we got? So we've got the Royal Enfield Classic 500, not the 350, the 500. And it's a bike which is sort of so little known really in the UK, but it's got some really interesting features on here, which I just love about it. And it's almost like the perfectly quintessential English classic bike, isn't it? So a couple of interesting things about this bike. The reason they stopped producing it was to do with the Euro 4, Euro 5 emissions. The engine they weren't able to adapt it to that. So they stopped importing it into the UK. Now, I don't know if you can still get this in India, it's quite possible. But the interesting thing about this bike, it's a unit construction engine. So you've got the casing, the main components of the engine, with the gearbox and the engine casings, they're all in one. So we're going back to, you know, when we think of unit construction bikes, we're thinking of sort of like old Triumphs and stuff like that, aren't we? Everything was unit construction then. So this was going back to that sort of period. We got that classic sort of bullet styling, the Enfield bullet styling. You know, this can trace its history way back, you know, to when God was a boy. Size-wise, now that seating position, compared to the other two, this is absolute classic sort of sit up and beg, isn't it? Slightly forward controls. It's just lovely. It's just lovely. And it feels like the classic 350, but just slightly scaled up. That's what it feels like. You get slightly more power out of this at the 500, single pot 500. You're looking at about 27 horsepower, but because it's a single thumper, you're getting about 40 odd newton meters of torque. So it's quite pokey. Well, it's quite powerful. Pokey is quite the wrong word, isn't it, with an Enfield? This is not a rapid bike by any stretch, but it's a sort of bike that would make such a great upgrade to the 350. And there's just nothing not to like about this bike, I think. Well, in my eyes anyway. I could just see me tooling across Europe on this thing. Everything's sort of big and bold, you know, the pegs, the brake, the gear lever, you know, it's just quite magic. The other great thing about this bike, obviously, and you sort of wonder why they would carry on doing that, is that not only is it electric start, but it's also kickstart, which is sort of gives it that sort of really interesting sort of flavour, doesn't it? That, you know, you can get over there and just give it a boot and away she goes. So what's unusual about these bikes anyway then? Well, there's not that many of them in the UK. You do see them from time to time. And there's a big following for these, and the people that have got them know how good they are. Because you've got a bike like this under 3,000 miles, which is nothing really on a bike like this. It'll plod around quite merrily like this. And you are looking at 3.7, so sort of about 3.9 on the road. That's pretty cheap. The other interesting about this one in particular, it's the last in the line, because this is a 21 plate. They stopped making them in 21, so this would have been sitting in someone's dealership, and it was registered sort of after, so this would be one of the very last you could have bought on a 21 plate. With this one in particular, you know, you've got Enfield engine. They're like sort of thing you get on front of a Land Rover in Africa to sort of bash, you know, lions and tigers out of the way. The other interesting thing about this bike is the weight. It is sub 200 kilos. I think this is actually lighter than the classic 350 for some reason. It's obviously got to do with that engine, the way the engine's put together, I thought. But this is about 100. It's very similar to the Ducati. You know, it's about sub 190, and that's wet as well, which is quite surprising, isn't it? It doesn't feel like a heavy bike. It doesn't feel heavy at all. Of course, that's another bonus when you're trying to drag yourself along. Things to watch out on these though, and one of the real great things about these bikes is that you do not have to worry about the valve check, because there's self-adjusting hydraulic tappets on here. Now, be careful with those. So you need to make sure that your oil is always clean, that you service it regularly. Because if the pipes and things and that get blocked, you can end up with problems. But, you know, it's just doing proper routine maintenance on that. But there's no valve check to do. All you got to do is change the oil and just keep riding it. How fantastic is that? And I've had comments from other subscribers that have got these, and they swear by them. They just think they're epic little bikes. And I completely understand that. Fantastic. I just think these are great. I have seen these with in the sort of like the RAF colours. I think they had some here, and they went out the door really, really quickly. This one's got heated grips, it's got a few extra bits and pieces, and the seat is lovely and comfortable, really wide seat. What a magic piece of kit. This would be my pick of the match. When I come in and said to the guys, you know, I'm going to do the Enfield, and they were like, taking the pick of the Enfield. But they're such great bikes. Such great bike. This is something you could just get on and just travel off on it. So that's my 3 bikes then. So, as I fall off. So the classic 500, which I think is an awesome bike. Ducati Scrambler 800, early models, fantastic, but they're all fantastic. All the models are great. And the Bonneville SE, I think it's a lesser known bike. And, you know, whether you like the spoke wheels or the alloy wheels, you know, I just think it's a cool bike, and they seem to be quite good prices for those. Right, so there you are, my 3 choices of retro classics, which get slightly overlooked, but I think you should have a look, because they can be bought for good prices. Right, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care, look after yourselves.